edition of the 8-Figure Attorney Podcast. I am Seth Bader, and today I'm really excited to introduce you to my next guest, Pamela Peynado. Pamela is a partner at an immigration firm. She was the youngest partner in her law firm. She was a partner before she was 30 years old. She is a Georgia super lawyer rising star. She is one of the top immigration lawyers in the country. She is a philanthropist, an activist. She's one of the most generous and giving persons I know, and she is otherwise just an amazing human being. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm like, wait, I love this introduction.
Well, I'm just telling the people who you are.
I love it. Thank you
so welcome.
much, Seth. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
What did you turn, about 29, 30 years old?
I mean, like mid-30s.
Yeah. I got to ask, so you just had your birthday.
Yes.
How was it? Did you celebrate?
I did. Like last minute, we did a huge fundraising event. We raised a lot of money. We paid rents for families. I also did a women empowerment event, and that was very successful. A lot of women came out and sort of shared their stories and their hopes and plans to do before the new year. So we're going to host another women empowerment in December and hold them to it. And then I went to Italy, by myself, because that's what you do when it's your birthday.
Well, congratulations. I'm glad you celebrated.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. I mean, even, I mentioned you're one of the most generous and giving people. So even on your birthday, the way you celebrate is by giving back and helping others.
You have to.
Tell me about that. I mean, why? Like, where does that generous spirit come from and that just giving spirit come from?
So, growing up, I was very poor. My mother was a single mother of 3. I mean, there were so many months that we couldn't pay the rent, we couldn't pay the bills, and I always wished there was someone that we could have called, right? Like a neighbor, just an organization, someone that would say, okay, you guys need $100, here you go, I'll help you. So I decided to become that. So I started a nonprofit organization called the Love Project. And what you can do is you go to the website, you fill out an application, and if you show us the bills and, we have an interview, we'll immediately send you that money, right, to offer you some relief. And I only think about my mom. Like, I wish we would have had some place that could have helped us immediately, right, not wait till the end of the month. So that's what we do. So every single thing that I do, it has to fall under 2 categories. Either 1, making money, or 2, helping people. And I feel like if I just focus on those 2 things, then I'm sort of, achieving my purpose. Because in order to help more people, I got to have more money, right? And I have to give it away.
Yeah.
So that's really, every time somebody wants to have dinner or anything, I'm like, are we going to make money together or are we going to help people together? And if it's not in one of those categories, then I'd rather not. And
again, just to be clear, the making money, obviously it affords you the opportunity to travel the world and see things and experience great things. But it sounds like the mission behind that and the purpose is to be able to make a difference and to give back.
Absolutely, 100%. And, I'm very unapologetic about it, right? Like, my mother had nothing, right? She came to this country. She was valedictorian of her class, and she was a maid, literally working so hard to be able to pay some of the bills. And I said, I'm going to live the life that you should have lived, right? And I'm going to be unapologetic about it, right? Like, I'm going to go after everything I deserve, right? Be at the top of my game, with as a lawyer, as a person, and then give back as much as I possibly can. But I can't give back if I'm not, you know what I mean?
Of course.
If I need help, then how can I give back? So that's why I made sure to work so hard, put myself in a situation where now, just today, to my own nonprofit, I'm like giving $500, right, for teen scholarships that we're raising money for right now. But I can't run a nonprofit if I'm struggling.
Of course.
So, I'm very unapologetic about that. I love, I employ a lot of people. We help a lot of people. And that's sort of been like my mission, and it's going very well.
I love it. You've mentioned your mom at least 3 times, maybe 4 in this opening, and she's passed away. I want you to talk to me about your mom and the influence. You've already kind of touched on it, but the influence that she had on your life and what you're doing with your life.
Absolutely. My mother was such a giver, even though she had nothing. Like, I'm going to get emotional. But, she was just dope, just like a strong woman. Never saw her. I'm gonna take a moment. She was just dope. Never complained. Sort of, if she and I had to go to construction sites and sell plates of food to the construction workers to pay the bills, that's what we were gonna do. If whatever we had to do to make ends meet, and it's like I saw it as fun. Like we were out there just cleaning houses together, selling plates of food together, and we made it happen.
Sure.
And even in that, she adopted 3 kids, right? Like she helped the community. She was always in a good mood. Until she was diagnosed with cancer and she passed away at the age of 56, very young, with so much more to give. So I feel like I owe it to her to really maximize it.
Yeah.
Because you just never know when a diagnosis can come about, when God decides that it's time for you to go home. And
Sure.
I want to be able to look at God and say, I maximized every day and I gave it all I had.
Thank you for sharing that.
Made me cry.
Tell me, you yourself were an immigrant or are an immigrant to the United States. And tell me about that story and that journey, where you came from, when you got here, and what that experience was like for you and your family, and then how that, I presume that helped sort of lead you into the career you're in as an immigration lawyer.
Absolutely. I was born in the Dominican Republic. As I mentioned, we were very poor, so poor that my mother had to leave me with my aunt while she worked because she couldn't really afford to take care of me. And, it's so funny when I think back, because I've always believed in the power of the word. Like, I used to always tell my classmates in the Dominican Republic, I'm going to live in America. Like, I'm going to live in the United States. And they would say, Pam, you say that every day. Like, you're going to stay here. Just stop. I said, no, I'm going to live in the United States. I know it. And I'm going to speak English. And I'm going to be successful. And surely, one day our visas got approved. We got our green cards. My mother said, we're going to be with our grandma, my grandmother, her mother. We're going to move to New York. And I was just like, gosh, it came true. Like I kept telling everybody, I'm not coming to school tomorrow because I'm going to live in the United States. And then I would be back at school. But one day, right, like what I was speaking came to fruition. We moved to New York. And, that was a very difficult stage for us because we didn't speak English. We didn't have, the nice clothes or really anything. My sister and I, we were bullied a lot. And so, we did the best we could. And then my mother decided to come to Georgia. And so I've been in Georgia for 20 years now, and I consider this my home. And I just always remember getting on that plane with my green card. And my grandmother, right, our immigration story was that my grandfather's sister married a U.S. citizen, petitioned for my grandfather, and then my grandfather, brought us here. It took a while. It took like 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And my grandmother, who had Alzheimer's, she always remembered the name of her immigration attorney. She would say, he allowed me to pay him like $20 a week. It was such a tender story. And, he helped us get here and be able to accomplish all the things that we couldn't in the Dominican Republic. So I think it's like my whole life I've been on this journey, towards immigration. And now that I'm an immigration attorney, I'm like, how full circle, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's cool.
So much I want to unpack. The power of the word, being bullied, how you maintain the positive spirit in spite of that. And then, of course, helping other people. And I know that you've told me, and I've heard from some others, that you've actually sort of accommodated your clients in the same way that I think that attorney helped your family. Talk to me about being an immigration lawyer. Talk to me about why it gets you up every single day and why it motivates you so much. It's not necessarily seen as maybe as one of the most glamorous, fields of law, but like it's such an impactful field of law, and you're making such a difference. Tell me, why are you so motivated to help immigrants?
Absolutely. So, like I said, immigration is my whole life, right? I
Mm-hmm.
came here on a green card. My stepdad was actually picked up by ICE and deported
Mm.
when I was about 18, right? I
Mm-hmm.
witnessed that. Then a couple of years later, the only dad that I have around, my uncle, gets picked up by ICE, gets sent to Stewart Detention Center, and he's there for about a year.
Mm.
And so I've personally seen how it affects everyone in the family, right? When one person is detained or one person is deported, and I've seen that long-lasting effect that it has on their children.
Mm.
So when I started working at this immigration law firm, it almost felt like this perfect alignment,
Mm.
right? I started off as a receptionist, and I just became so passionate because I got it. Like I understood, right? When a wife called me and she was upset, she wasn't upset at me. She was upset at the situation.
Sure.
And I could understand that very well. So every time I approach a case, I think about if this was my stepdad, right? Like if this was my mother, how would I handle it? And we've been very successful, thank God. We've done hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of pro bono cases, but we've been very successful financially because we represent cities, like cities in Georgia. We represent, a lot of athletes. We represent banks, hospitals, right? Like entire hospitals. It's a blessing. So I feel like, one thing that I really believe in is that the more you serve, right, like the more you earn, right? Like somehow. And so we gave away hundreds of thousands of dollars in pro bono cases. My staff was looking at me like I was crazy. And then we would get literally like a month later this huge contract, with a city that said you're going to do all of our immigrant employees, or with a restaurant and a franchisee. So it's like it sort of just completely balance each other out so I can do my passion, which
Sure.
is helping those that can't afford it. And then I represent all these cool, amazing entities that
Sure.
allow me to employ so many people.
Sure.
So,
I want to come back to the power of the word.
okay.
I assume that you speak to yourself a lot. I noticed that a lot of leaders, a lot of really successful people, they are very intentional and they set a vision for themselves and then they accomplish it. I mean, what is it that sort of you, like, can you give me some examples of how you have communicated to yourself and used words, to ultimately achieve your goals and your dreams?
I think your thoughts become reality always. So, sometimes folks come up to me and they're just so negative, and I'm like, why are you, thinking this way? Like, let's switch it around. And I feel like every single time that I've said something, it's come true. As a kid, I said I was going to live in the United States, right? And here I am. And I said I was going to speak English, and here I am, right? And then it's like, and now don't get me wrong, like I doubt myself sometimes, right? Like even in the process, I'm like, can I really do this? But I'm like, okay, snap out of it, Pam. Because how you speak to yourself and the relationship that you have with yourself,
Sure.
It's the most important relationship you're ever going to have. And if you don't love on that relationship and if you don't empower that relationship, it's eventually going to crumble. So I always tell myself exactly what I want, right? Like I tell myself, I want to employ this many people. By the end of the year, I want to have helped this many. And I give a specific number. And I say, I want to drive this. I want to do this. I want to fly here. I want to be in good health. I am in good health. I'm in perfect health. I'm going to help so many people. I'm going to impact so many people's lives. And I tell myself that so much that now I 100% believe it's true. When somebody says, what's next for you? I said, I'm going to become a judge. It's not, I know it's going to happen. Like, you're going to hear it here first. Like, I say it because I know it's going to happen. I know one day I'm going to be in Washington. I know one day I'm going to be on a private plane looking at all the families starting schools. And if you just keep like this, dream big, speaking it into existence, I promise you it's going to turn into reality. Like it's going to.
Should I call you Your Honor right now?
I think,
I don't
want to disrespect the current judges, but it'll come. It'll come.
I'm sure that it will. I'm sure that it will. I'm curious. You started out at your law firm as a receptionist? I assume that one of the things you spoke into existence was to become a lawyer and to become a partner. Tell me about that journey. I mean, there's a lot of young professionals out there, some that work for you, some that work with me, some that are not even in the legal space, that may not be able to fully see their potential and their future. I mean, tell me about your journey from receptionist to partner.
That's definitely my favorite story to tell, because while you're in it, you're like, oh, I hate my life. This is tough. My boss is so hard on me. But looking back, I'm like, my God, thank you, God. What an opportunity, like what a blessing. So I was working at Landmark Diner. I was at Georgia State, right, as an undergrad. I was working at Landmark Diner. My coworker said, hey, there's an opening at my law firm. I'm like, well, how much does it pay? Because, all of us, we're always thinking about that paycheck. But opportunities often don't come tied with a paycheck, right? And people miss it because they're looking for that paycheck. And they miss these amazing opportunities. So I said, okay, how much does it pay? She's like, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8. Like, I'll go interview, but, we'll see. So I interview with George Lee. Okay. And he's like, hey, this job pays $8. And I'm like, I'm in college. I'm bilingual. I'm a hard worker. He's like, $8, take it or leave it. At that time, I had a credit card agency offering me $12. So I'm like, man, he's not even willing to meet me halfway. But something inside just said, I don't know, man. I feel like this is where I belong, like in a law firm with the big bosses, right, and with the suits. I just love that lifestyle. So, I said, let's do it. And he said, can you begin today? I said, well, I got my grandma and my little sisters in the car downstairs, so I can't, but I'm going to be here tomorrow. And, I showed up super early with, like, the one nice shirt that I had. I think my shift ended at 5:30. I was there till 7:30. I submerged myself into that work. As a receptionist, I was working maybe 60 hours, probably more. I just loved it. I wanted to be the best receptionist that this law firm had ever seen. And I remember one night, George Lee, he came to the office and he said, Pam, you're still here. Why do you work like you own this place? I'm like, because one day I will. And I'm laughing, like, one day I will. And so, I paid my dues. I stayed the course, making very little money, but I knew that what I was learning was priceless. So I stayed the course. I got eventually promoted to a legal assistant, paralegal. My mother said to me, Pam, go to law school. Like you deserve to be an attorney. As a paralegal, I was telling attorneys what to do, right? Like, hey, argue it this way, writing out their closing arguments, preparing everything for them. I was just so submerged into it. Because I think if you're not a good servant, if you're not an excellent servant, an excellent receptionist, you're not going to be an excellent boss. You're not going to be an excellent CEO. So if God can't trust you to be a good receptionist, do you think God is going to trust you to lead a law firm? Absolutely not, right? So you got to take all those steps, like in your life, all those stages, maximize it, be the best at it, add so much value to it that literally by the time that, I went to law school and graduated, and I thank one of my mentors for this, I had a meeting with George Lee, right, who I had this interview with many years before. And, he asked me, what do you want to stay? I can't lose you. And so I said, I want this amount. I want 50% partnership. I want the name change. I want, and I'm like, he's definitely going to say no. Like I'm listening to my mentor who's hyping me up, telling me, ask him for this, girl, ask him for this. And he said, okay, anything else? I said, oh my gosh, like, wow. That was a very surreal moment for me because sometimes I think it taught me sometimes, not to undervalue yourself, one, and two, to do the work, and that work will speak for itself. So it's like he couldn't lose me because I'd done everything and I'd worked harder than anybody. And then now I'm like a partner at this law firm. I'm like, is this really happening? Like, what is life? I was able to take care of my family. My mother didn't have to work anymore, which was my goal from the beginning. it's just been such a crazy ride. But looking back, I'm like, I'm so glad I took that $8 job. Thank you, God, for not letting me take that $12 job, because it was $4 more, and I would have missed my calling and my purpose.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And now, how many years did you work between the time you accepted that $8 and the time you made your, not even demands, but you told him what it is that you thought you were worth, and where you ultimately became a partner?
10 years.
10 years. I'm curious, like during those 10 years, were there a lot of discussions about pay, or was your focus really on just maximizing value and adding value to his organization?
Maximizing value. I never asked for a raise. Never. And now George was very generous and would give me bonuses, raise my pay, and $1, and sort of said, wow, like, we really appreciate you, and kept going. And I never asked for a raise. Now, I do tell my mentees, like, let's strategize on this, right? Like, you should demand your worth. But I think, again, like, sometimes you got to look at it as a value. What is it that you're learning? What is it that it's going to get you ahead of the curve? So then when I became a partner, I made more money than any of, the law students that I knew that I graduated with. But they were making more money than me, initially. But I just knew it. I knew that once it was going to pop, like, it was going to be big. So I went from making nothing to making, like, 20 times more than that. And, like, in a year, in a day, right, after I became a lawyer. But I think if you make yourself indispensable, like, irreplaceable, right, like, man, how could they afford to lose you? So if you go up to your boss and you're like, I want this raise, well, you show up late, you have a bad attitude, you do the bare minimum, or you do just as you're told. There's no innovation. There's no, that's a problem.
What do you say to those people out there within the legal space and outside of the legal space that may actually be doing the work that you were doing, staying late, going the extra mile, coming in early, being innovative, really offering solutions? Maybe they've been in a job for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, maybe a year, but things are not moving fast enough. What advice do you give them so that they can sort of find the patience to stick it through and actually get to that point where they can have that conversation and say, look, or really where they shouldn't even need to get to the conversation if somebody identifies that they're adding value and they're, and then they're themselves giving back value. But what do you say to those people that may not think it's moving fast enough?
I have these conversations all the time, because in this social media world, people are like, oh my God, she became a partner overnight. Like, oh my gosh, they became rich overnight. They did this overnight. And so they have this mentality that, my life is not moving fast enough. And I hate that, right? Because they don't see all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into getting, where we're at. They don't see it because, we didn't have social media back then. And I would just say to them to please stay the course. I tell my mentees, work backwards. Like, think about, number one, where do you want to be? What is your end goal, right? Like, I want to be the owner of a law firm. I want to be a CEO. I want to be rich, whatever you want to be. Yeah. Then work backwards. Like, okay, what do I have to do to get to that point? And if you want to be a lawyer and you're at a law firm, why would you go work somewhere else, right? Or, sometimes even they might go to a different law firm for a couple more dollars. But it's like, if you're working at a place where you're building trust and you have that relationship, right? Like, just stay the course and it's going to pay off. I was working for 10 years, like 10 years of my life that I dedicated to this law firm. And, the result kind of exceeded my expectations.
Of course.
Completely. And I would just say add so much value that they can't afford to lose you, right? So just stay the course, be patient, like work backwards on your goal. Like, where do I want to be in 5 years? And is this place where I'm at going to take me there? And am I passionate about this? Because if you're working at a place and you're not passionate, you're just taking up space. Let somebody else come into that law firm and set it on fire.
Sure.
Right? If you're just, I'm going to get there, I'm going to, do what I'm told. No, get out. Like, you're just wasting space. You're wasting energy. Let somebody else come in.
Talk to me about mentorship. You've mentioned you had a mentor, and you've mentioned that you have many mentees now. First, let's just talk generally about the value of mentorship. And then what I want to hear from you is about your mentor or mentors, and then we can talk about how you're mentoring others now.
Absolutely. So my first mentor was George, my boss, right? Met him when I was, 19, 20.